Hi everyone, this is a short guideline video to help you to successfully complete assignment 3. So these instructions are taken directly from your assessment guide on ECI, but basically the easiest way to approach this assignment will be for you to think about how you would go about teaching your class how to write an information text using the writing process. And thereafter, designing a teaching resource, in this case, a PowerPoint presentation that's going to serve as a lesson resource for you throughout this process. So for the first part of your assignment, you are going to do a researched introduction. This is going to be a maximum of 1 page, right? So you're going to do some research on what are the values and the uses of digital strategies in the classroom. You also need to put in some outcomes. So what are the outcomes of this project? Ask yourself, at the end of teaching your learners how to write an information text using the writing process, what sort of knowledge, skills, and values are they going to come out of this process with? And those are basically the outcomes that you have for this project. You then have to be able to link your project to CAPS. This shouldn't be too difficult. You're going to be looking at things like the writing process. How does that link to CAPS? Where can you find the information text? How is it relevant in terms of the grade that you've chosen? So any connection that you can make with this assignment and the CAPS document you put into your introduction. All of this needs to be done in the maximum of 1 page. So the next part of your assignment is your project plan. So this is basically the plan that you have for the lessons that you're going to teach through this process. You need to think about how many lessons do you need in order to complete the writing process, and what the focus of each one of those lessons is going to be. Every teacher is not going to approach their writing lessons in the same way, but there are going to be some common elements if we look at the writing process. So let's just look at some of the possible lesson topics that you could have for your project plan. If I were to teach my learners how to write an information text, maybe the first lesson could be on brainstorming. The second lesson could be on selecting a topic. Then I'm going to have to look at things like carrying out research, maybe gathering images. The next lesson could be on drafting and editing. So you're going to have to decide which lesson topics you want to include in your lesson series. And remember, it's completely up to you. However, you need to make sure that you have the writing process in there. You can present part 2 in the form of a table, right? So as you can see here, I've got lesson, outcomes, and description of task. And I've just done a little illustration here for you. So lesson 1 could be brainstorming. The outcomes for that lesson is going to be the learners will be able to brainstorm ideas through mind mapping. The first activity, learners will be divided into groups to discuss topics that they are passionate about. The second activity, after learners have selected a topic, each learner will be required to brainstorm ideas using a mind map. So I have the topic for my lesson, I have the outcomes for my lesson, and I have the activities that I'm going to do in my lesson. You will continue doing this for every lesson that you are planning to teach until you get to the end, which is the final product of your information text. As you can see here, I've moved on to lesson 2 and I've chosen to go researching and collecting information. You'll include your outcomes and then your activities. Right, so moving on to part 3. Now part 3 is your actual teaching resource, which is the PowerPoint presentation that you're going to design for your lesson. Your PowerPoint presentation is basically going to be the lesson resource that you are going to use. Now I've said here, provide a simple example of an information text which you would use to model each step of the writing process. So basically, if you want to teach your learners how to write an information text, you need to show them what an information text is. So find a good example of an information text, and you can put this example in your PowerPoint presentation, and each step of the way You can manipulate this information text to illustrate your point. For example, if you want to look in your first lesson at brainstorming, you can put a few topics on your PowerPoint presentation, and then you can show your learners how to actually mind map. So choose a specific topic and then illustrate mind mapping on your PowerPoint presentation. If you want to move on to drafting, you can take that example of your information text that you have and you can show your learners how you would have come up with a draft before actually editing and then having a final copy. So use the sample information text as an example to illustrate to your learners what each step of the writing process will look like. It also says here that you need to include scaffolding activities. Now, if you're unsure what a scaffolding activity is, please refer to the information that we've covered in under Unit 4 on ECI. Right, you are required to include references. Remember, your introduction is going to be research, therefore you have to have references for this assignment. And if you refer to your rubric, you'll find there is a mark allocation that has been allocated for references. Just some other points that I want to draw your attention to, right? For assignment 1, you are asked to submit an information text. Please do not use the same information text in this particular assignment, simply because it's going to pick up a very high plagiarism percentage because you've already submitted this. So find a new information text that you can use to illustrate to your class. Secondly, you may insert pictures, animations, and sounds in order to make your PowerPoint presentation creative and appealing to your learners. But remember, you don't want to overcrowd this presentation that it is not effective, relevant, or practical. Right, the last point that I want to bring to your attention here is that you are not allowed to use any embedded videos in your PowerPoint. If you do so, you are not going to be able to submit as Turnitin will reject your submission. So please, no embedded videos in your PowerPoint resource. That brings us to your submission. Your submission has two parts. And if you click on the Turnitin link on ECI, you'll find that there are two different tabs. The first tab is where you will submit your introduction, your project plan, and your references together as one document. So please type up your introduction, your project plan, and your references in one document and submit that under part 1 and 2. And then under part 3, you can submit your PowerPoint presentation as a separate file. Okay, all the best with your assignment.